Good morning. I'm Cheryl Winsby, and I am currently on the Worship Committee as well as the Social and Environmental Justice Committees. And today I am your Worship Associate in conjunction with Wendy Pickett. Thanks to our readers this morning, Mara and Lula Ormond, Julie Price and Lindsay Outen, and our Zoom techs, Wayne and Judy, and Wendy doing double duty as one of our worship associates, who is actually one of our Zoom tech associates. Yesterday was World Food Day, while today is International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. It is also the day that we are celebrating the United Nations, whose day is actually next Sunday, and the Unitarian Universalist connection to the UN. Our opening words today come from a letter that some of us received from Bruce Knotts. He is a former Peace Corps volunteer who worked abroad before joining the State Department. After he retired from the Foreign Service in 2007, he joined the UU office at the UN as its executive director in 2008. He spoke to us in person in a service years ago when we were more regularly having an annual UN Sunday. Here are excerpts from Bruce's letter. Dear Cheryl, I am a cancer survivor. Those of you who know about cancer know that early detection and action is important. The longer you wait, the longer the cancer can grow, and the harder and more painful it will be to obtain a cure. Our planetary parallel is, of course, climate change. We've known about the problem for over 50 years. Token moves have been made nationally and internationally over the past decade towards sustainability, but never with the urgency required. The effects of climate change are abundantly evident this year, with floods, forest fires, droughts, sea level rising, polar ice cap melting, and more. We should be moving as quickly as possible away from fossil fuels, industrial agriculture, and all that continues to compromise the climate health of our planet. Had high-emitting countries like the US and Canada committed to the Kyoto Protocols signed in 1997 and promoted vigorous global action to implement that agreement, the planet could be well on its way back to good health. Had we shifted all oil subsidies to fund sustainable energy in 2015 after the Paris Climate Accords, again, we'd be in better shape. But with many nations continuing not only to depend on, but to subsidize fossil fuels, oil extraction, and coal power, we've made our planetary recovery much more painful and less likely to succeed. Miraculously, there is still hope for our sickened planet. We're not dead yet, but we don't have the luxury to play around anymore with the health of our planet. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which brings together the world's best climate scientists, reported recently that it's too late to avoid some of the consequences of climate change, but there is still time to save the planet from the most disastrous. The UU at UN agrees that we need bold transformation in ways that center those most harmed by our current systems. We are working with the UU Service Committee to put together a BIPOC set of proposed delegates to the next conference of parties in Glasgow, Scotland. In our conversations with the UN, we advocate for biodiversity conservation, ending subsidies and explorations for fossil fuels, and moving to total reliance on sustainable forms of energy by 2030. We also strongly support ending commercial animal agriculture. We support indigenous land management to restore soil health, as well as stewardship and planting of natural forests to enhance biodiversity and absorb carbon. We promote all of this at the United Nations and in our programming for UN Sunday services. There is no room for the usual political games and procrastination. Decisive action is required right now. That's why it's so important for you and your congregation to be all in for climate justice. I hope that your congregation will center climate justice with a focus on food equity this October on UN Sunday. We hope that this service will help your congregation get involved in the UU climate action movement. Now, so here we are, and here is that service. Our gathering music today is Our World is One World by Cecily Tyler, which is from our Gray Hymnal. Please feel free to sing along in your own space.
Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rain that falls. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate we make a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The ways we spend, the ways we share, who are the rich and poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call. This is all of our world, all of our world. It's all of our world. Yes, this is all of our world. It's all of our world. It's all of our world. This is all of our world.
Good morning. My name is Wendy Pickett, and I'd like to welcome you to worship this morning. I'm one of the founding members of the Unitarian Universalist of Central Delaware, and I'm honored to serve currently as a member of the Board of Trustees, the Leadership Development Committee, the Worship Committee, and the Stewardship Team. Whether this is your first time with us or attending our Sunday services as a part of your regular routine, we are glad that you're here and hope that you will find room in this community for your spirit. Cheryl and I are pleased to serve together as your worship associates this morning. Every year in October, UU congregations around the world celebrate United Nations Sunday. On this day, we celebrate the work of the United Nations and the Unitarian Universalist Office at the United Nations, referred to as UU at UN. The theme for today's service follows the theme for this year's UU at UN Intergenerational Spring Seminar, All In for Climate Justice, Food Equity and Sustainability. We are appreciative of the resources made available on the UUA website that helped us in planning today's service. We hope that by the end of the service, you will have a greater appreciation of the UU at UN and that you will be poised to consider your own potential further involvement, both locally and globally, in the UU climate action movement. We continue to be grateful for the technology that allows us to worship together online and to continue to build community in other ways. Thank you in advance for your patience and grace with any delays or glitches we may experience. In addition to our worship each Sunday at 10, we meet on Tuesday nights at 7 for a more informal time of check-in and sharing. Please consider joining us for that gathering. Now, I invite you to take a deep breath as we reaffirm our intentions to be a radically welcoming community. whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you've been, whatever you've done, whatever your religious beliefs are or aren't, you are welcome in this spiritual community. However you move in this world, how much or how little is in your bank account or wallet, however you are feeling in this moment, you and all of who you are welcome in this spiritual community. We are all enhanced by being together.
Please join me this morning in lighting our chalice with over 1,000 Unitarian Universalist congregations worldwide. The chalice lighting words this morning are titled "Committed to Respond" by Lynn Harrison. Let me take a moment and light the chalice. Committed to respond to the call of a wounded world, we join together this day with loving hearts, hands, and minds, embracing the interconnected web of water, air, and earth. We light a fire of sustaining hope, ever bright with love and justice. May we bring forth this day new wisdom, strength, and courage to create a new world, not of wealth, but well-being, a world of new peace and abundance for all. As we give thanks for this earth, our shared and singular home, may we dedicate ourselves to its ongoing care. Rising to the calls deep within us and all around us, may we respond today and always with courage and with love. Please join me in our unison affirmation. Words are in the chat box.
Love is the spirit of this church, and servant its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Our opening song this morning is "The Tide is Rising," written by Rabbi Shoshana Mira Friedman and Yotam Schachter. This recording is by Annie Patterson on vocals and guitar and Peter Blood on violin, creators of Rise Up Singing and Rise Again.
The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. This land is holy, and so are we. This land is holy, and so are we. This land is holy, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The sun is shining, and so are we. The sun is shining, and so are we. The sun is shining, and so are we. is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. Each week at UUCD, we include a brief UU moment in our worship service that serves to make us aware of and to nurture our connection to the larger body of Unitarian Universalists and the Unitarian Universalist Association that binds us together. For our UU moment today, we will focus on the UN and the Unitarian Universalists' involvement with the United Nations. The United Nations was founded in 1945 as a global association of governments that facilitates cooperation in international law, security, economic development, and social equality. With aims to protect human rights and achieve world peace, it is a center for governments to communicate and develop strategies to reach these ends. Since 1947, October 24th has been called United Nations Day to commemorate the anniversary of the UN's creation. In 1971, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution recommending that the day be observed as a public holiday by member states. The history of Unitarian Universalist involvement in the United Nations dates back to its very beginnings. Along with a number of other Unitarian volunteers, Elvira Fradkin was present in San Francisco at the founding of the United Nations on October 24th, 1945. Fradkin went on to be a strong supporter, active throughout the UN system, including serving as the UN representative for the American Unitarian Association. The Unitarian Universalist Association office at the UN was created in 1962 at the recommendation of the US ambassador to the UN at the time and a Unitarian, Adlai Stevenson. From leading the Faith Caucus to establish the International Criminal Court, to overcoming UN apathy about sexual orientation and gender identity issues, the UU at the UN has a long history of providing strong leadership in all aspects of human rights at a policy level through UN consultative status. In celebration of UN Day, the Unitarian Universalist Office at the UN invites congregations and individual UUs to engage with the story of our global Unitarian and Unitarian Universalist faith by deepening their understanding of the United Nations and devoting one service in October to reaffirming the connections between our UU principles and the vital issues dealt with at the UN. It is now our time of joys and concerns when we offer one another the opportunity to share very briefly what is most in our hearts right now, life's celebrations and concerns. As you do so, we invite you to light a candle in your own space. Through the action of sharing and kindling a flame, we give energy to our best thoughts, meditations, sympathies, celebrations, and prayers. We hold these as sacred in our collective hearts. We would also like to invite anyone new to our community to introduce yourselves if you would like. We welcome you warmly and would be pleased to light a candle in honor of your connection with us and whatever joys and concerns you carry in your hearts. At this time, we invite you to change your view to gallery view in the upper right corner of your screen so that you can see everyone who is here. As you feel led, please unmute your microphone and share your joy or concern and light your candle if you have one. You can watch the mute signals on the lower left of each person's video stream to see if anyone else is unmuted. It's best if we share one at a time. Please mute your mic after you have shared.
we light one final candle for the joys and concerns that were not spoken by those of us here, and in solidarity with others in our community who could not be with us today.
As Unitarian Universalists, a central part of our worship, in person and online, is the opportunity we all have to practice the art of generosity and the spiritual practice of gratitude. Our gifts to our congregations are what allow our communities to live into our calling and mission. We are grateful to you for the many ways you support our community, including your financial pledges and offerings. Your gifts matter, and it's one of the ways that you make this world a better place. Thank you for your passion and your generosity. For those who are making pledges or who want to contribute to UUCD, please visit www.uucd.org and click on Support UUCD for more information about how to donate online or by mail. In addition to making pledge payments, and in honor of our celebration of UN Sunday today, we would also like to encourage those who can to donate to the Unitarian Universalist Association's office at the United Nations. Details on how to donate will appear in the chat box. They already have. Please listen now to Allison Hess from the UUA office at the UN.
Happy UN Sunday from the UUA office at the United Nations. Since our office was created in 1962, Unitarian Universalists have held a prominent place at the UN, advocating for UU values on the global stage. By engaging every day with member states and agencies and speaking out in defense of human rights and to protect our planet, our UU office has become a force to be reckoned with at the UN. We're working right now to mobilize a coalition within the UN community to address the global prevalence of violent repression of political opponents, minority groups, and others by increasingly militarized police forces. We know that only through collaboration and mutual support can our world address the most pressing issues of our time. For instance, the international community must come together to solve global problems like climate change. And we know that governments and multinational companies aren't the ones who have the right solutions. Solutions must come from communities that are most impacted by the changing climate. And our office at the UN is proud to be able to help representatives of those communities get access to attend international gatherings, like this November's UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, so that their perspectives can be heard at the decision-making tables. None of this would be possible without the generous support of Unitarian Universalists. The UU office at the UN relies on congregational and individual donations to continue its work. Please donate generously to sustain this important presence at the UN. Congregations with at least 5% of their members donating at a supporter level of $60 or more are on their way to achieving the 6th Principal Congregation Award. You can donate through text or online. To give by mobile phone, simply text UN Sunday to 51555. To give online, go to giving.uua.org/UU@UN. Thank you so much for your generosity. Your gifts can truly make a global impact.
Our offertory song this morning is More Waters Rising by Saro, Lynch, Thomason. As an introduction to this song, Saro says, "This is a song that I created back in March 2016 when the HB2 bill was passed here in North Carolina, which required people to use the bathroom based on the gender listed on their birth certificate. For me, this song is about seeing what's coming on the horizon, harder times that are inevitable and unavoidable. But the answer to the fear of what's coming is resiliency and claiming a strength within ourselves that has been there all along. Aspects of this song are inspired from elements of African-American civil rights and protest songs. Ironically, this song also seems incredibly apropos to climate change, hence its use here. Please feel free to sing along in your own space. The lyrics will be in the chat box.
There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more fires burning, they will find their way to me. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. There are more mountains falling, they will find their way to me. There are more mountains falling, this I know, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will wade through the waters when they find their way to me. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know. I will walk through the fires when they find their way to me. I will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains when they find their way to me. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will wade through the waters when they find their way to me. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know.
The words for our centering reading today are from History's Road by Marjorie Bowen Sweetley and Clyde Grubbs. The road of history is long, full of both hope and disappointment. In times past, there have been wars and rumors of wars, violence and exploitation, hunger and homelessness, and destruction of this earth, your creation. We have become a global village with a growing realization of how fragile this earth is and how interconnected we are to each other and to all creation. We cannot continue to live in the old way. We must make a change, see a new way, a way toward peace with justice and a healthy planet. O great creative spirit, you have given a vision of the good, and we yearn for a new way. But where are we to find the courage to begin this work? We know that a different tomorrow is possible, but how can we build it? We think of the prophets, women and men, who voiced unpopular opinions, who made personal sacrifices, and sometimes lost their lives for the sake of justice. We think of Isaiah, who called out to those who are led in captivity, go free, to give solace to the poor and homeless. Let us be inspired by all who work to overcome misery, poverty, and exploitation. We think of Harriet Tubman, who called out to people of goodwill to join her on an underground railroad, to lift a dehumanized people from the bondage of slavery to the promise of freedom, even when it meant challenging unjust laws. Let us be inspired by those who are outlaws for freedom. We think of Gandhi, whose belief in soul force, the witness to love's truth, helped to overthrow the oppression of an empire and gave witness to the way of nonviolent action. Let us be inspired to become witnesses for peace. We think of Chief Seattle, who reminded us we belong to the earth, not the earth to us. Let us be inspired by all who work for the healing of creation, of Mother Earth and all her creatures. Who are the prophets who inspire you? They may be well known or known only to you, offering personal inspiration, courage, and hope. May they join a great cloud of witnesses to a new way of life, the way of peace and justice, the way of justice lived according to the way of peace, the beloved community. So may it be. Amen.
In 2015, the UN General Assembly adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which included 17 Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved by the target year of 2030, when we are to have achieved a 45% reduction in net carbon emissions. The introduction to the 2030 Agenda includes the ambitious pledge that no one will be left behind, and we will endeavor to reach the furthest behind first. These twin goals of mitigating climate change and raising up marginalized peoples awkwardly appear together throughout the remainder of this reflection, sometimes competing for prominence. Ultimately, meeting climate change goals will require a major change in our attitudes and economic structures, which will enable us to promote and value other people, including those different from us. But we have a very long way to go to get to that place. The UN recognizes the current global food system is both unsustainable and inequitable. 1/3 of food produced for human consumption is lost or wasted every year, while about 1/10 of the world's peoples are hungry. Industrial and unsustainable practices mean that food waste and agriculture account for 8% and 24% of global carbon emissions, respectively. I'm going to repeat those two sentences because I think they are really important, and Wendy will post them in the chat. 1/3 of food produced for human consumption is lost or wasted every year, while around 1/10 of the world's people are hungry. Industrial and unsustainable practices mean that food waste and agriculture account for 8% and 24% of global carbon emissions, respectively. That's huge, 32% when taken together. While many people don't have enough to eat, another important issue is an overabundance of ultra-processed foods that cause malnutrition, even among the populations who have enough to eat. Many communities, especially those suffering from long histories of colonialism and racial oppression, have limited access to fresh, nutritious, and delicious foods that they can afford and that are culturally appropriate. In addition, every year, farmers are forced to give up croplands and harvests because of drought, floods, or contamination, conditions caused by or exacerbated by environmental abuse and climate change. United Nations Sunday is an opportunity for Unitarian Universalists to learn about some of the sustainable development goals, to pressure our government to implement some of the policy changes that these goals and our values call for, and which our governments have already committed to, and to make some changes ourselves. In this brief reflection, we are going to focus mainly on 3 of the 17 sustainable goals, those relating most directly to food systems. Goal 2, which is zero hunger. Goal 10, which is reduced inequalities, and Goal 15, which is sustainable use of land and ecosystems. And then we will finish with additional learning and action items that you may want to pursue on your own. Please note that the actual goals, which I will read, are long and were obviously written by committees. They don't come off easily off the tongue. So Goal 2, end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. Current agribusiness-centric approaches have proven harmful to the environment and have not resulted in the production of healthy food or food security for the world's peoples. They have also failed to ensure consistent and sustainable access to healthy, nutritious food, and in order to increase profits, may even work against this access. Making large-scale changes to our food and agriculture systems is necessary if we want to tackle world hunger and food insecurity. One of the targets of this goal highlights the need to support the agricultural productivity and incomes of small-scale food producers, in particular women, indigenous peoples, family farmers, pastoralists, and fishers, through secure and equal access to land, water, knowledge, financial markets, and non-farm employment. Sadly, the U.S. Department of Agriculture policies have at times directly favored large farming operations, as have our subsidies, and have actually actively tried to reduce small farmers. Secretary Perdue told farmers in 2019, "Get big or get out. That's just the way it is." Now we're seeking to reverse that trend. Addressing harmful food systems must also be about equity and justice for those who grow food. It has been politically expedient to provide inexpensive food to the world's peoples, but there's been a cost for this to the environment and to the people who labor for little money to make this cheap food so readily available. There has also been much discrimination against Black and Indigenous farmers in the United States. Goal 10, reducing inequality of access to healthy and nutritious food within and among countries, is a prime component to achieving food justice. The current status quo leaves too many living in famine or food apartheid, while other communities have more good food than they know what to do with, food that ends up being dumped into landfills that then emit methane. One target of this goal is to ensure enhanced representation and voice for developing countries in decision-making on the global stage. Unfortunately, many of the countries and communities most negatively impacted by current food systems have minimal power to influence international policies, perhaps by design. Consider this quotation from a representative of Soulfire Farm, an Afro-Indigenous-centered community farm in Grafton, New York. The representative gave the keynote address at the UN's 2021 Spring Seminar. Racism and injustice are built into the DNA of the U.S. food system, beginning with the genocidal land theft from indigenous people, continuing with the kidnapping of Black people from the shores of West Africa for forced agricultural labor, morphing into convict leasing, expanding to the migrant guest worker program, and maturing into its current state where farm management is among the whitest professions. Farm labor is predominantly brown and exploited, and people of color disproportionately live in food apartheid neighborhoods and suffer from diet-related illnesses. The system is built on stolen land and stolen labor. It is working as designed. Similarly, there is a global disconnect between who owns the land and who works the land. More than 2/3 of arable land globally is owned by 1% of people. I'm going to repeat that statistic and Wendy will put it in the chat. More than 2/3 of arable and land globally owned is owned by 1% of people. This fact is tied to the practices of land exploitation and monocropping, use of pesticides and herbicides instead of following a restorative agricultural model, which rebuilds soils and captures carbon. This leads us to our next goal. Goal 15. Protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. We're going to make a brief detour here while Mara reads about how the soil sustains us. It's important to understand this issue in order to understand a major reason why agriculture must change and use regenerative practices.
The words that follow are by Ariel Aronson Eves and are titled "The Soil That Sustains Us." The dictionary defines soil as the upper layer of earth in which plants grow, or a black or dark brown material typically consisting of a mixture of organic remains, clay, and rock particles. But I like to think of soil as a community. There are three main mineral components of soil: clay, sand, and silt. There's also a little bit of organic matter made from decayed plant and animal material. When organic matter is really broken down, so it can't decompose anymore, it's called humus, which shares a root with the word human. In addition to minerals and organic matter, also in the soil are billions of microorganisms. Microorganisms are tiny little life forms like bacteria and fungi. These microbes, together with the roots of plants, make up the community of the soil. Just like we humans need to get certain nutrients from our food to be healthy, so too do plants. Plants are sunlight powered to make their own food out of air and water. But just like we can't live healthily off of only carbs, there are some nutrients plants need that they can't get through photosynthesis. Luckily, they've developed a system of exchange with the soil microbes. The microbes are able to break down minerals in rocks or capture nutrients from the air. In this and other ways, they get nutrients into forms that the plants can take up. In exchange, the plants feed the microbes sugars. All this is happening under the soil's surface. This is what happens in healthy soils. This system of cooperation breaks down when the plants stop needing the microbes. Why would they stop needing the microbes? When we heavily apply chemical fertilizers, the plants get addicted to the quick fix. They are freed from the slow process of relationship building, of having to share. If the plants are annuals, they'll be gone the next year, and the community system will have broken down. The next year's crops will need the chemical fertilizers to do well, because the relationship between plants and soil microbes has suffered. It will take years to restore. But degradation is preventable and restoration is possible. It just takes a lot of care and learning to see crops not simply as products we take out of the land, but part of a valuable community. And that all starts with soil, learning to see soil as more than just dirt. You might even think of it as sacred.
Thank you, Mara. Sustainable use of land and ecosystems is a crucial element to the achievement of drawdown, or reversing the course of climate change by supporting techniques where carbon is captured from the atmosphere and trapped. in plants, soil, or the sea. In order to do this, we must take all measures possible to stop deforestation and seek wisdom from communities whose traditional practices halt desertification and land degradation. In all of this, biodiversity is key to planetary health and resilience. Natural ecosystems, not just specific plant and animal life, but the global climate as a whole, are in peril due to unsustainable practices and exploitative relationships most humans have with the natural world and other humans around us. This is to our own detriment, since declining ecosystems pose enormous threats to humans' health, well-being, and way of life. So that's the problem. How to change these things? What can we do? There are many angles from which to approach this problem and many different ways to bring about changes. We'll explore the realm of personal responsibility first. Methane is responsible for some 30 to 50% of the approximately 1 degree centigrade warming that we see today, about 1/3 of which comes from land. Because methane only stays in the atmosphere for 10 to 20 years and is about 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide, mitigating methane emissions is a highly effective strategy for reducing warming in the near term. Livestock management measures laid out in a study, such as reducing enteric fermentation and manure management, and consumer measures that reduce food waste and shift to plant-rich diets, are crucial for curbing methane. Preventing food waste and shifting to healthier, more sustainable, but still delicious diets turns out to be crucial for achieving the 1.5 centigrade climate targets, ensuring future food security and preventing continued degradation of ecosystems, one analyst said. When we choose to purchase food that is produced regeneratively, adopt a plant-rich diet, and reduce the ridiculous amount of food that is wasted, it turns out that a large part of climate crisis can be averted. Food security for all people can be ensured, and massive deforestation would be avoided. When you grow or purchase food, what changes could you make with this goal in mind? Could you change your purchasing habits? Could you adopt a more plant-rich diet? Could you reduce the amount of food you waste? Take a minute to consider, and then jot down your answers to the following questions. Remember, it will take some major changes to make a very real difference in the climate. Wendy will post these questions in the chat. Please respond in the chat. Name something that you or your community will let go of or stop doing in order to further food justice. Name something you will keep doing or reinvest in order to further food justice. Name an organization or community group you will join for food justice. For example, our Delaware Food Bank, ActionAid, Create Climate Justice, UU's for Social Justice, and Good Food Purchasing Program, or even the UU at UN. Many of us have given money and time to the Delaware Food Bank already. Our Social and Environmental Justice Committee is working on these issues also. We have people following UUDAN and taking part in the Delaware Table for Economic and Environmental Justice. Our committee communicates action options to the congregation when we are aware of them, so you can take action too without being a member of our committee. Then there are systemic changes. Educating yourself is really an important part of change. You can learn so much more about these from spending time on the UUA's Create Climate Justice website, which is a cooperative venture between the UN at UUA, Green Sanctuary, and Ministry for the Earth. The UU's for Social Justice site which has a Take Bold Action for Climate Justice tab, and registering for calls to action from our own UUDAN, Delaware Action Network. The BBC also has a great many articles in their series called Follow the Food. The UUSJ website, with its newsletter and links, offers free documentaries on climate change, which are really worth checking out. Most of these sites make it very easy to write letters to your representatives about whatever part of this issue is most current or nearest and dearest to your heart. Name an action you will take in terms of writing a letter or calling your representative that will express your UU value on this topic. Giving money to support these organizations is always helpful, as some of you may have done today, particularly now with the large climate bill stuck in the legislature currently. Becoming more conscious of your everyday choices is very valuable. The Action Aid website is also excellent for learning about a wide variety of issues. Two of their spotlighted issues are relevant to this topic. For our final video, please listen to poet Naima Penniman, who echoes the points we've made here while claiming her connection to the earth for herself and many others. Listen to her refrain, "Every seed saved will set us free." I hope you will continue to post more responses in the chat while we listen. I will later post more resources to our closed Facebook page.
Every patch of earth unencumbered by concrete, where soil and atmosphere meet, be a portal to presence, a terrain of remembrance, a vote for survival in an unpromised future. These gardens are blueprints of interdependent destiny, intergenerational memory, saving seeds for food as remedy. See, my people know what it's like to eat and still be starving. So we turn it hardship into harvest, lawns and schoolyards into gardens, homegrown bounty in our palms. We come from soil and stardust, and so we conjure. Giving props to the magicians who grow provisions for our kitchens. We smuggle spinach into prisons, transform the places that we live in. Trade psychosis for symbiosis and stay focused. We sprout sunflowers that tower on neighborhood blocks, harvest raindrops on rooftops that water our crops, propagate plant medicine for the metropolis, guarding our plots, because our gardens are not for profit or loss. Cross-pollinate the promise, fam. We got this. Take a deep breath. Restore calmness. With lemon balm bounty in our palms, hot peppers in our pockets, black-eyed peas spiraling up Lenape blue corn stalks with buttercup squash carpets, three sisters symbiotic, talking stories of solidarity on native territory. Migratory monarchs transcend borders, morning glories ascend fences. Pay attention to the lessons Mother Nature keeps expressing, how to multiply our blessings. For justice and sustenance amid glaring disparity, every seed saved will set us free. In an age of opulence and scarcity, every seed saved will set us free. In a time of intensifying violence and climate calamity, every seed saved will set us free. Hold on tight to the source. We have all that we need.
Please join us in the words for extinguishing our chalice. The words are in the chat box.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words today are titled Do Not Fear Agitation by Tanya Marquez.
Do not fear agitation, for agitation is the rhythm of life itself, to be put into motion, to be stirred.
No temas a la agitación, puesto que es el ritmo de la vida misma. Ser puesto en movimiento, incitarte.
Do not fear the movements that decenter what you have always thought permanent.
No temas los movimientos que descentran lo que creías permanente.
You carry within the center of your understanding the compass to show you the way.
Llevas dentro el centro de tu entendimiento la brújula que te muestra el camino.
Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, the relationships to all beings and the world that will ground you.
Lleva contigo el amor que te sostendrá, la visión que te guiará, las relaciones con todos los seres y el mundo que te pondrán los pies sobre la tierra.
Go in peace and in gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love.
Ve en paz y con una suave agitación mueve a este mundo hacia el lado del amor.
Our virtual worship has ended, but our connection to each other and the earth endures. Go blessed to be a blessing for others.